Welcome to DS Trucks. In today's video, I want to do a long-term, honest review of the Salt Dogg spreaders. So I have two of them. I've got the 1 yard Salt Dogg in my F250, and I've got the 2 yard Salt Dogg here in my F450. Now, the 2 yard is the SHPE 2000. It's not the Pro version. But it is, this one's a little bit cheaper. And I got the 1 yard Salt Dogg. I don't know what the numbers are on this one, but it's the 1 yard Salt Dogg. And I want to give you guys the pros and the cons. So let's start with the pros. These spreaders, guys, they are a little bit more affordable compared to your Douglas Dynamics spreaders, your Boss spreaders. Now, are they better? I don't know. I don't have hands-on experience with those spreaders, but these tend to be like $1,000 less, and they tend to have some pretty good capacities. 2 yards for I think I paid like $4,000 for this spreader, and I get 2 yards of capacity, which is pretty good. Your Douglas Dynamics ones are going to cost around $5,000, and I think their $5,000 spreader is like a 1.5 yards capacity. So the price on these, they tend to be a little bit more affordable. They're still expensive, but a little bit more affordable. This 1 yard I think was $3,000, and it does work out nice. It's only 1 yard, but it gives you a little bit of room here in your bed of your truck to keep some shovels or whatever else you want to keep. And if you have small properties, guys, a 1 yard spreader will get you through pretty good. It will have enough capacity. It's a little bit hard to load because it's not a real big spreader. But when you think about it, you put 1 yard of salt on here, and a plow, and you're going to come pretty close to the capacity of an F250. So if you are concerned about your capacities, as far as weight, the F250 would carry 2 yards I don't know about 2 yards, but it will carry more than a yard of salt if you put it on the truck. But it's probably not a good idea to go over your gross vehicle weight rating. With this spreader, with a half yard of salt, and that big Fisher XLX, which is one of the heaviest plows, I can be right at 9,009 whatever. I can be pretty close to the gross vehicle weight rating of this 250. So, this truck has a 10,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating. It's not hard to reach that, even with this 1 yard spreader. Now, without the plow, I could safely carry a full load of salt, but I probably can't carry a full 2 yards of salt with an F250. Now, with the 450, with 2 yards of salt, I'll be right there at capacity on the 450. So I'm probably not going to be full of salt with the heaviest plow, but I have to double check. I can't remember I know the gross vehicle weight rating on this truck is 14,000 pounds, but the truck's heavier, so surprisingly the payload is not that much higher. It's a little bit higher, but not as much as you would think. Now, more of the pros and cons. Now we're talking about weight. A pro of these Salt Dogg spreaders compared to some of their competitors is they are light spreaders. Both of these spreaders I was able to put in the truck by myself with no help, without a forklift. Now the 2 yard spreader has fork pockets for a forklift. You could slide a forklift right up in here and lift up this spreader, but I don't have a forklift or a bobcat or anything, and I was able to just tip this 2 yard spreader up on its back end. I'll just lay it down like a moving blanket or whatever, so it wouldn't get all scratched up on the concrete. And I'm able to tip it up on the back end and lean it into the truck, pretty much only lifting half of it at a time, and slide it into the truck by myself. So if you're a one-man operation, then you can put these in by yourself. If you're strong, if you can lift 100 pounds at a time, I think you could put one of these in. You just kind of tip it and slide it in there. It's not without, and obviously if you can get help, that's a huge benefit, but there's no reason why, you can't, put these in. I've been able to put these in by myself. I'm not the smallest guy. I'm not the biggest guy. I'm kind of like the average size. I can imagine if you're smaller, you probably wouldn't be able to do that. But anyway, the weight. This spreader, I believe, is just over 300 pounds for the 1 yard. And the weight ticket on this 2 yard was 600 pounds. But I think that includes the pallet. And, when I'm putting these in by myself, I break them down a little bit. I take the screen off the top. I take the spreader off. I take whatever off that I can and then put it in the truck. So they're lightweight, and at the end of the day, that means more payload that goes toward the salt that you're carrying versus just the spreader itself. So the lighter the spreader, the more salt you can carry. These are the auger systems, and Salt Dogg does have the drag chain systems. And I don't think, if I had the drag chain system, I don't think I'd be able to lift that up. I think that will be too heavy. More on the pros, the tarps that they give you, even though most guys would upgrade from the tarp, I like the tarp because it really does keep all of the moisture out. It hangs over the lip, and your salt's going to stay pretty dry with the tarp. I've been able to leave some salt in here and get stuff done. It doesn't get that cold in my area, so I'm able to get away with it. But if I were to get a freeze up, I would just pour a little washer fluid in there to break it up. You could mix a little calcium chloride in there, or find something that you can mix into the salt so that it won't freeze up on you and turn to a frozen block. So I've done that. If you get a bag of calcium chloride and kind of pour it in the nose, it could protect the load. If it's mixed in good, it could protect the load. But the vibrators are pretty good, so if it gets clogged up, you probably won't have to empty the spreader. You could probably use the washer fluid trick, the windshield washer fluid trick, or some other techniques. But I haven't had any problems with freezing up, and I do at times leave salt in the spreader. And I know you're not supposed to do that, but I'm so busy that I'll probably end up putting a half a yard of salt in both of these, and I should be able to get them to unfreeze if they do freeze. But typically I've been pretty good because these tarps keep it pretty dry, guys. It's these sit outside all year and the tarps stay on them, and there's no real moisture getting in. So I've been lucky there. So the spreaders do work. I'm not one of those guys that really peep the spread of the salt, and I can't really say that they spread bad or what spreader spreads better or anything. As long as the salt spreads, I'm happy. I used to spread salt with this walk behind spreader. This walk behind spreader is how I used to spread salt. So the fact that I don't have to get out of the truck and the salt's spreading automatically with the press of a few buttons and knobs, I'm happy. So the guys that talk about the spread pattern and all that, I really can't say anything too bad, because as long as the salt gets down and it's spread, I'm happy. As long as there's no piles of salt or anything like that, I'm happy. I will say there are settings here as far as the chutes and everything. You can move this metal slot. Mine are just straight because I haven't really had an opportunity to figure out what perfect setting. I run my steel guards straight, and I will say the salt does spray a little bit uneven. For example, I have these rubber flaps on here, and I'll have more salt coming out of this side versus that side. And I'm sure if I got in there and adjusted everything, I could get it to not do that. But I kind of work with it. I know that it's going to throw farther to the driver's side, and I just kind of work with. It's not that big a deal to me, and it'll plaster the rubber flap here this way, and it will barely get any this way. So I know it doesn't spread perfectly even. I'm sure I could dial things in with this gate to try to get that to be a little better, but it's not that big a deal to me. If I do get time to do it, then I will go ahead and do that, but I've been fine with this setup the way it is and just spreading it the way it came out of the box from the factory. So if you're really OCD about how the spread pattern, there are options to adjust the spread pattern with this little chute, and I don't really mess with it, so it's hard for me to really, speculate how the spread pattern. I know people complain about spread pattern, but as long as it's spreading, I'm happy. Now, I think that's pretty much it for the pros. They do give you a hot wire to wire in lights. So that brown wire right there allows you to wire in any kind of lights. You just have to find a ground. I do wish they just gave you the ground in the harness, but you just got to hook up a ground. And I've added these lights here with this quick release connection right there so that I have more lights. And I'm probably going to add another light somewhere. This truck doesn't have any lights, but I might add some later. But yeah, other than that, they've been good spreaders. This hopper did crack, and I'll try to show you that. And I don't know if I could get it warranted or not, but I'll probably end up just ignoring it and running it. It did crack right here, and it looks like what happened is as the hopper is expanding and contracting, the metal got real tight right here. As you can see, it's literally pushing in to the plastic. So I don't know if I could modify this at all, if I trim this, because this is just too tight. Look how tight it is. So it got cold, it contracted. Oh, look, there's salt in here. I didn't even realize I had a little bit of salt left in there. And like I said, guys, it stays pretty dry, so I'm sure that's going to spread. But this did crack right here, and that is one of the negatives. So I guess we'll go into the negatives now that we've kind of found our first negative thing. So if you are looking for one of these spreaders and you get it, and particularly the 1 yard, and you see that how tight that is, you don't want that grade to be that tight, because I'd imagine this poly expands and contracts quite a bit. It's our first cold day in a while, and I noticed just from it being cold, my straps are loose. So these straps have worked themselves a little bit loose just from being real cold out. This one's still tight because it got tightened up when it was cold. But yeah, I think expansion and contraction and that grate being a little tight up there, I'll probably end up maybe putting some epoxy on it, some kind of epoxy glue or something to try to close up that hole. But I don't know if it's going to be a real issue. We'll see kind of how it goes. But that's one negative. Another negative to these spreaders, and if Dogg, if you see this, maybe you can do something about it, is these gates for the salt. Up underneath here, there's a gate for the salt that opens and closes. I like to lubricate that gate, because if it doesn't want to slide, that's a problem. But the nuts and bolts that go onto these are wing nuts, and they actually hold the gate shut. The first time I used this 1 yard spreader, the vibrating of the spreader loosened all the wing nuts. I almost lost this stainless steel guard because all the wing nuts that were there came loose, and I had to replace it with locking nuts because the guard literally almost fell off. Then the wing nuts here were loose, and it vibrated the gate shut. So I literally, this year when I went out the first time, my wing nuts came loose. I'm out spreading salt. The gate shut on me, and it wouldn't spread any salt. And then it got jammed because the auger forced all the salt to hit the gate. So I had to get out. I had to turn on the vibrator to push the gate, because once the gate closes on this, it's hard to get the gate back open because the salt kind of holds the gate shut. So I had to get out of the truck and push the gate shut with the vibrator going in order to get the gate back open. And I don't really like, I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of the gate, the way it opens. I've seen some better designs from like the Douglas Dynamics big salt spreaders. They have this big chute, this big gate that kind of goes up and down. This gate, not the best. It vibrates loose, so I'm going to put some thread lock on these here. The wing nuts, I'm not a huge fan of the wing nuts. This one, the new one does have the wing nuts, and I put some blue thread lock, I think, on these. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm gonna probably add a little more thread lock because once this vibrates, all that stuff comes loose. On this 1 yard, at the end of the season, I think the bolts to hold the vibrator or something under there was loose, so I just had to tighten those up. But like I said, one of the negatives is some of this hardware just kind of comes loose when it's vibrating. The solution for me is to use a little thread lock compound. Their lock washers aren't that great. They got little teeth on them. They aren't that great. They've come loose on me. So that's a negative. So if you're gonna get one of these, maybe look into getting some Loctite or whatever, some thread lock. I use the blue thread lock so that it can come loose if I need it to. I typically just run the gates open at all times, but I probably should close them. I don't know. But I haven't had any issues just leaving them open. It doesn't really drop the salt out if it's open and I leave it in there. So at least not that I know of. So yeah, it will spread salt just if you vibrate it by itself. But if you vibrate and use auger, obviously it comes out. I typically vibrate these every single time I'm using them. Another negative to this Salt Dogg setup is the controllers. I'm not huge on their controllers. Now, you turn them on, they wire right to the battery. But when you look at these controllers compared to some of the others, a lot of the electronics are up in the controller. It makes the controller heavy. You hear the relays in the controller, but I don't think all this should be up here in the controller. The plugs, they have too much going on here. The full power of the plow runs through the controller, which is kind of goofy, I think. So you have hot going all the way up through the controller, then going all the way back to the spreader. I wish that the main power just went straight back to the spreader, and only the controls came through the cab. If you look at like the Fisher and the Western spreaders, they have these real sleek, small controllers that take up less space. These big controllers, they take up a lot of space in the cab, and they're kind of hard to figure out where to put them. On this F450, I mounted the controller right here to the center console, and it does work. And this is kind of the price you pay when you go with a cheaper spreader. And the Salt Dogg is a cheaper spreader. Still a good spreader, but a cheaper spreader. It does not have a blast button, but it does have a pause button. So you'll be spreading your salt. You'll be at 1 on the spinner. You'll be at 1 on the auger. And me, I typically run these pretty low. I'm not a guy that's running tons and tons of material. I'll be running like 1 or sometimes maybe tops 3. And I'll run the vibrator. Vibrates real nice, but the pause button is nice. Now when you hit the pause button, the spinner keeps going, but the auger will stop, the vibrator will stop, and it just will pause the spread. Spinner keeps spinning, and you hit unpause, and then you are spreading salt again. So it's nice. So it doesn't have a blast button, but you could pause it, and you could kind of turn everything up, and then you can unpause it again, and that's kind of your blast. So, it is what it is. That's the con, not having a blast. The controller's a little bulky, I think, but at the end of the day, they do work good. I want to show you some more on the controller. Let me turn this off. Unpause it, but then actually physically turn it off, and I'll turn both my knobs off. But I want to show you guys another thing on this controller, and this is going to be on the Super Duty or the 250 Super Duty. They're both Super Duties, but here on the 250 Super Duty, I mounted the controller in a little bit different spot. It's a little bit controversial, but I like it because my hand falls right onto the controller while I'm operating the truck. I got it right here on the seat. Now I couldn't do this with the 450 because the seat has controls. This is an XL truck and the seat does not have any controls, but on the 450 the seat has controls, so this will not fit here. But I love this location because it just fits nicely right here. In your hand, you're operating your saw, you're able to look out the window, your hand just falls right there. The downside to doing this like this is when it's snowing, I got a little bit of snow on the controller. Not a whole lot, but if the windows are down, it's still snowing and you're out working. The snow just comes into the cab and it lands right on the controller, and the label for this controller has gotten to be a little funky. So this label seems like it might fall off. If I've tried to peel this label off, it peel right off. So this sticker ain't all that great, and the label is starting to feel funky, and that's got a little bit of snow on it. But I have made an effort to cover it up when it is snowing, so that I'm not getting snow all over the controller, because they really don't want you to get the controllers wet. Like I say, there's tons of relays and components that flow through the controller, and I kind of wish it wasn't like that. They give you these bulky plugs that you got to drill holes for and run through, and I like to go underneath my seat and do it like that. But you know, your fuses right here, you got fuses and everything. It's still a good system, but you know, this is kind of the price you pay when you save the money. But yeah, as far as negatives go, you know, the controller could be a little better, but I understand it's probably a big expense for Salt Dogg to make a change like that. Everything is kind of universal, which is nice. These spreaders, I think the spreaders are pretty much the same. Pretty much. I don't know if they're interchangeable, but they look to be interchangeable, which is nice. Maybe this one for the big Salt Dogg, I don't know. They seem like the same spreaders. They do have the drag chain options. They do make great spreaders, guys. They do make great spreaders. They have something for pretty much any level of service that you offer. They have some pretty big ones, but you know, at the end of the day, they are some good spreaders. So I've had success with them. Are they the best? I don't know. You know, for me, they seem to work good, but you know, at the end of the day, you got to save some money somewhere. So they do, in my opinion, save a little bit of money. But anyway, guys, that's it. That's it for my review of the Salt Dogg spreaders. Comment below and tell me what you think about this. Share this video if you know anyone who's interested in a salt spreader. But this is DS Trucks, where we run nothing but the best. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Over and out.